Shadow Warrior 3 doesn't beat around the bush. In an era where games feel like they keep trying to be bigger, this one is happy not to draw itself out with exposition-filled cutscenes. Instead, it throws you into the action right away and rarely lets a moment of ease set in from there. And while that focus on fun is refreshing, Shadow Warrior 3 is almost completely unremarkable in its execution, being about as straightforward as an FPS can get. It might not offer many new ideas, and its protagonist may be unbearable to listen to, but sometimes solid movement and satisfying weapons is all you really need. Picking up a good while after Shadow Warrior 2, a massive dragon is wreaking havoc across Earth, and it's up to our returning hero, Lo Wang, to destroy the lizard. For Shadow Warrior, stakes like these aren't anything new, but it didn't take long for that story to wear thin all the same. It's generally a rushed load of nonsense, but you don't play Shadow Warrior for the story. You play it to shoot demons, and there's certainly plenty of shooting to do. Shadow Warrior 3 takes the same exciting approach as games like Doom Eternal and Titanfall 2 before it, emphasizing speed and maneuverability above all else. Lo Wang moves lightning fast, able to double jump high above the heads of enemies or quickly dash away from their attacks. Every arena you fight in is built around these movement mechanics, turning battles into wonderfully frantic flurries of gunshots and katana swipes. In between killing demons, Shadow Warrior 3 generally only gives you one thing to do: run to the next arena full of demons. The platforming sections that separate each fight never last very long or get too complicated, and exploration during those stretches isn't really a thing. You can occasionally go off the beaten trail to find upgrades that improve Lo Wang's weapons and abilities lightly with things like increased ammo, but outside of those few instances, you're only ever fighting or making your way toward another fight. Shadow Warrior 3's linear campaign is simple but effective in this way. It gets to the point, and as a result, the roughly 4.5 hours it can take to reach the credits feels respectful of your time. The flip side of that, of course, is that it isn't a very complex or robust FPS in the end either, but sometimes straightforward can still be fun. What's an absolute shame is that Shadow Warrior 3 spends so much time pushing you ahead that it doesn't give you a chance to go back. Without an option to revisit levels, any upgrades you might have missed along the way are simply gone. Thankfully, these collectibles aren't hard to spot, and you'll get enough of them without exploring to easily finish the campaign. But it's still too bad that missing one means you'll have to wait until a second playthrough if you want to completely kit out Lo Wang's arsenal. When it comes to actually killing hordes of demons, Shadow Warrior 3 isn't doing anything too unique. In fact, it follows the standard FPS playbook in pretty much every way you can imagine. When enemies are shot, chunks of them blow off in gruesome fashion, something that's been normalized in first-person shooters since 2016's Doom did it so well. You can zoom around combat arenas without a problem, but mixing platforming into the regular shoot-'em-up fare isn't a new idea either. It's not that Shadow Warrior 3 is doing any of this poorly, it's just not nearly as exciting when all of its tricks are borrowed. Each of the 6 weapons are satisfying to use, from the starting 6-shooter pistol to options you'll eventually unlock like a single-fire railgun and the shuriken launcher. Each one feels punchy, though with such a small arsenal, some start feeling stale just a couple hours in. Upgrades do remedy that a bit, changing how some weapons behave, but none of them are overhauled entirely. Instead, weapon upgrades hand out extra ammo capacity or some smaller tweaks, like making time slow down whenever you fire the railgun. To keep weapons from getting old too quickly, Shadow Warrior 3 often restricts ammo to force you to switch around your strategy. While ammo can be found on the ground in most arenas, those stockpiles will eventually run dry during a fight, and after that, the only way to get more is to kill enemies with your katana. Running low on health incentivizes the opposite, encouraging you to gun down enemies in a bid for health pickups. Holding resources hostage like this is somewhat heavy-handed, but it ends up being a fun way to keep you on your toes. Gore weapons can mix up this system further, but only a bit. After performing a finisher on an enemy, Lo Wang will rip a new weapon or buff out of them. Flying shogun heads that shoot lasers, for example, can be ripped apart and turned into a grenade that shoots lasers. They aren't tremendously useful, but Gore weapons are still a welcome quirk within Shadow Warrior 3's otherwise fairly vanilla gunplay. Shadow Warrior 3's pace is what keeps it exciting. The campaign hands out new weapons just as others get tiring, and it wraps up levels as soon as they're about to overstay their welcome. In fact, the only part of Shadow Warrior 3 that should have come to a stop was how much Lo Wang talked.
Ooh, yeah, my metal detector says you're... Fuck. Worth nothing.
Shadow Warrior has a reputation for stupid humor, and this one continues that attitude in earnest, almost as if it's proud to wear the "our character's name is still a penis joke" badge. Hearing Lo Wang quip away after killing demons eventually gets tiring. 2 hours in, he seems to run out of jokes and puns, making them that much more grating when they start to repeat. Shadow Warrior 3 does such a great job at keeping needless dialogue out of the picture, but couldn't seem to do the same for the jokes that fly out of its main character's mouth. Shadow Warrior 3 provides some good old-fashioned FPS action, even if it isn't doing anything particularly special within the genre. Its forgettable story gets almost entirely out of the way of its blistering fast combat, chock full of enemies that are fun to shoot up through largely familiar methods. Shadow Warrior 3 doesn't take many risks to help it stand out, but its quick campaign is still a gory and enjoyable gauntlet while it lasts. For more, check out our reviews of Crossfire X or Elden Ring, and for everything else, keep it right here on IGN.
God. Yeah, no, not that I don't appreciate what you did, but no naked hugging.
I'm glad you're here, buddy.